You may remain seated. Nicholas Prosper, you are 19 years old. On the 24th of February 2025, you pleaded guilty to purchasing a firearm without a firearm certificate on the 12th of September 2024. The murders of your mother, Juliana Prosper, your sister, Giselle Prosper, aged 13, and your brother, Kyle Prosper, aged 16, early the following day, possession of a firearm with intent to endanger life, and possession of a bladed article. I was told at 8:45 this morning that you were refusing to attend court. I ordered that you had to be brought. You do not want to be here, but it is not your choice. You have to face the consequences of your actions, to hear the court's sentence passed in public, and it is important for those who loved your victims to see you sentenced. The facts underlying these convictions are chilling. For about a year after leaving Sixth Form College in Luton, where you were failing to work towards A-levels, you planned a school shooting on a scale that you hoped would make you globally notorious. You explicitly sought to emulate and outdo Adam Lanza, the 20-year-old American who shot dead 20 children and 6 adults at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newton, Connecticut in 2012, before shooting himself to avoid capture. You aimed for 34 deaths, one more than the deadliest school shooting of recent times in the United States of America at Virginia Tech in 2007. As the investigation revealed, this case incorporates many recurrent themes in school shootings, such as a young male perpetrator, selection of distinctive clothing or uniform, recording a message about the activities, a sexual interest in children, withdrawing into an online world, reference to violent computer games, suicidal intention, and a lack of empathy towards the victims. To achieve this goal, you researched firearms and produced a meticulously forged firearms certificate. You set about buying a shotgun, pretending you needed it for clay pigeon shooting, about which you were able to speak confidently. The forgery was of sufficient quality that after one failed attempt, when the seller grew suspicious because you offered so much more money than he had advertised the gun for, you succeeded in acquiring a 12-ball Nico double-barreled shotgun and 100 cartridges on the 12th of September from someone who held them legally. The man delivered them to the car park of the block of flats in the northern outskirts of Luton, where you lived with your mother and siblings. You paid £650 and £30 petrol money. That seller described you as polite and well-speaking, a perfectly normal person. You did not come across as a novice with firearms. This presentation was inconsistent with the way you had been behaving with people since you returned to school after GCSE exams 2 years earlier in September 2022. Although of at least average intelligence, you had become noticeably disinterested in interacting with others. You didn't want to be in the sixth form and were angry that your mother made you go. Juliana Prosper had separated from your father, Raymond Prosper, when you were about 8 years old, but he saw his children regularly and lived not very far away. Juliana worked full-time to support her family. She had noticed you were withdrawn at home just as at school. Your parents agreed with a referral to the local child and adolescent mental health services team, but nothing came of it. Although autism was suspected and you seemed to be overwhelmed by social interaction and uncooperative in lessons, you resisted assessment or intervention. You were asked to leave school in March 2023. From then until September 2024, you existed in an online world, choosing little real-life contact with others apart from attending a gym and working part-time, stacking supermarket shelves for a few months. Your internet activity has been analysed. You are deeply fascinated by notorious murderers, perpetrators of mass school shootings around the world, and rapists. You collected images of a 6-year-old girl, C, one of the victims of the Sandy Hook school massacre, photographs of 2 nearby primary schools, and over 200 indecent images and videos of children. 19 of these were of the most serious kind, category A, depicting the rape of children. You recorded audio files discussing topics such as necrophilia, the 6-year-old victim C, and a computer game called The Walking Dead. On the 13th of September 2023, exactly 1 year before the murders, you phoned St. Joseph's Catholic Primary School, which you had attended happily, to find out the daily timetable and movements of the children. You carried out reconnaissance at the school and captured images of the staff and pupils from the school's website. In one of the notes you have written since arrest, you drew a diagram of the early years classroom at St. Joseph's and wrote alongside, "Kill all." In April 2024, you put together a curated outfit made up of black and yellow clothing, a yellow bucket hat, and shoes with yellow soles. You videoed yourself at home, dressed in your distinctive outfit, acting out the shooting with a piece of wood in the place of a gun. In June, you tried to make contact with the mother of C using a pseudonym. You looked at numerous images of firearms documentation, details of guns for sale, and obtained the means to forge your own firearm certificate, into which you inserted a copy of the signature of a police officer. That summer, you obtained the manifestos of Anders Breivik, who killed 77 people in Norway in 2011, and Christopher Dorner, an ex-police officer who killed several people in California in 2013. As the date drew near, you even searched for the weather forecast for Friday, the 13th of September. Having taken possession of the shotgun and cartridges on the 12th of September, you spent the rest of the day reading about the impact of shotgun injuries to the neck. This was the means by which you intended to kill yourself after the school shooting. Into the following morning, as usual, you were researching necrophilia. You researched Sarah Everard and your usual diet of mass shootings. From 4:11 a.m. for half an hour, you watched extreme animated pornography. At 4:42, the last images you looked at were of school massacres, including from the Columbine High School in 1999. Between then and 5:33 a.m., when you left the tower block, neighbours heard a serious disturbance in your 8th floor flat. Later, it was established that you were disturbed by your mother, who realised that something was terribly wrong, and her intervention forced you to act earlier than you had intended. From extrinsic evidence, such as the scenes of crime examination of the flat, the evidence of neighbours, the pathology, together with some of your own accounts, the sequence appears to be that when your mother realised you had a gun, she struggled with you, before you shot her in the head at very close range in the hallway. You placed a novel with the title How to Kill Your Family on her legs. Your little sister Giselle woke up. She put on her glasses and you fired a shot at her from a distance which grazed the back of her head. The terrified girl ran to hide in the living room and tried to conceal herself. You pursued her and inflicted an immediately fatal contact shot to her right eye. Your brother also woke and tried to seek refuge in the kitchen and protect himself with a knife. It was an unequal contest. You shot him in the chest from a distance, but then, while he was still alive and moving, stabbed and slashed him more than 100 times to his head, face, neck, torso and limbs, while he pleaded with you not to kill him. One of the wounds penetrated his lung, but they were intended to disarm him. When you had, he ran into the hallway, where you shot him dead with a close shot in the head. The first 999 call was logged at 5:29 a.m. The police arrived at 5:50 a.m. and entry was forced by armed officers at 6:08 to find a scene of horror. As well as the 3 dead, there was blood staining throughout the flat, including handprints in blood, as well as aspirated and spattered blood. Several knives were found blood-stained, and at least one of them apparently bent out of shape. You had to have reloaded the double-barreled shotgun at least twice. There is no evidence that you sexually assaulted any of your victims. Plainly, these murders were not intrinsic to carrying out a school shooting, but they were part of your plan. And the boy you idolized, Adam Lanza, shot his mother while she was in bed before driving her car to the Sandy Hook Elementary School. You spent the next 2 hours hiding from the police. At 6:22 a.m., you posted a pre-recorded video to Facebook in your shooting uniform, reading a script about the Walking Dead game. You said you intended to shoot your sister in the face. Police activity in the area was intense, and you realized it was far too early to go to any school. You emerged from the bushes at about 7:55 a.m. and raised your arm to a marked police car. You had blood on your hands, clothes, and glasses. You had reloaded the gun with 2 cartridges, and 33 other cartridges were recovered where you had left them, en route between the tower block and the school. You had disposed of 2 mobile phones which were recovered by the police. You later admitted you had joined a paedophile Twitter group to discuss sexual attraction to children, and the primary purpose in trying to destroy the phones was to protect your online friends from being arrested for child porn. Although you had abandoned the gun with the cartridges, you had a kitchen knife in your pocket. After arrest, you displayed no signs of agitation or mental distress. You were inappropriately cheerful and engaged the officers in conversation. You asked if the local schools were locked down. You made no comment in interview, but later gave a mental health nurse who was assessing you in custody some further details, including that you had planned for a year to kill 34 people, ending in your own suicide. 30 of them were to be school children aged 4 or 5. The year before, a plan to rob a gun seller had failed, and so you took steps to acquire a firearm by deception. You had intended to carry the shooting out on the 12th of September, but the 13th sounded better. You took a knife with you when buying the shotgun in case it didn't go smoothly, and you were prepared to kill the seller. You hadn't hated your mother or siblings and had had a good life with them. Your intention had been to kill them in their sleep and rape your sister. You had intended to leave the flat at around 8:30 and arrive at St. Joseph's School at 9 a.m., go into a class and pretend to rob the teachers, then start shooting the 4-year-olds, continuing in another classroom, if necessary, to achieve the target of 30 children. You wanted to cause the biggest massacre in the 21st century, as there had not been one. Your mother, waking up at about 4:50, had triggered your activity earlier. You wished you had killed more. I am conscious that nothing I can do or say can reflect the worth of Juliana, Kyle, and Giselle's precious lives, or the depth of their shocking loss for their family and friends. Nevertheless, I want to express the court's sincere condolences. Raymond Prosper has described the desolation of his family as a loss that will never be healed. He considers himself to have lost 2 sons, Kyle and you. Juliana Falcon was hardworking. She cared for her children and tried to persuade you to get help when you were struggling at school. She was an innocent victim of an ungrateful, unfeeling son whose only wish was to be famous through destroying the lives of young children. Carl Prosper was 16 with his whole future ahead. He fought bravely for his life, but there was no contest with his older, armed brother. Giselle was just 13 years old, a smiling girl, no doubt the treasure of her parents and friends. The sentence for murder is life imprisonment. The court ordinarily fixes a minimum term, every day of which must be served because there is no automatic release. A minimum term does not in any way equate to the value of the life of a murder victim, still less 3 such victims. After serving the minimum term, an offender can apply for release to the parole board. The board can only direct release if it is satisfied that imprisonment is no longer necessary for the protection of the public. If release, the second part of the sentence begins, which is supervision, subject to licence conditions restricting the offender's freedom and a lifelong ability to be recalled to prison. Possession of a firearm with intent to endanger life also carries a maximum of life imprisonment, although that sentence is not mandatory. I have received detailed submissions from the Crown and the Defence on the application of the framework in Schedule 21 of the Sentencing Act 2020 for assessing life sentences. They have referred me to a number of cases where the statutory scheme has been considered, including Stewart and others, Davies, Connor Chapman, Jones and others, Markham and Edwards, and Kamara Jara. At the court's request, they provided further written submissions shortly before the hearing about the application of the recent amendment to the framework, which, by Section 321 of the Act, extends the availability of a whole life order to murderers aged 18, 19 or 20. Plainly, given the nature of the overall offending in this case, the court has to consider whether this is one of the rare occasions when that provision is satisfied. I have considered all the authorities and all the written and oral submissions carefully. I bear in mind that in the case of an adult aged 21, the murder of 2 or more people where each killing involved a substantial degree of premeditation or planning, or where a single child, a person under 18, was murdered with a substantial degree of premeditation or planning, a whole life order would be the normal starting point. This is obviously such a case. However, Section 321(3)(c), provides that the court may arrive at a whole life order in the case of an 18 to 20-year-old only if it considers that the seriousness of the combination of offences is exceptionally high, even by the standard of offences which would normally result in a whole life order. This is described accurately as an enhanced exceptionality requirement. Despite the gravity of your crimes, it is the explicit joint submission of counsel that a lengthy finite term will be a sufficiently severe penalty, and this is not such an exceptionally serious case of the utmost gravity, where the sentence of last resort must be imposed on an offender who is 18 at the time and is 19 today. It's argued on your behalf that you are not entirely to blame for your offences because you are autistic and some psychopathic traits, and have some psychopathic traits in that you are incapable of feeling empathy or remorse. I'm also invited to conclude that you are less mature than your chronological age. In determining these matters, I have to view the case as a whole. Although you are indisputably a very dangerous young man, the risk to the public is met by the imposition of a life sentence. The aim of sentencing in a case of murder is just punishment for the crime. Just punishment requires a careful assessment of the perpetrator's culpability and the harm caused by the crime. In every murder, the harm is of the utmost severity. Your crimes involved the following: very substantial premeditation, 3 murders on the same occasion but committed individually. Each victim was shot with an illegally held firearm. You acted during hours of darkness on people who had been asleep in their own home. A 13-year-old child was shot in her face while trying to hide under a table. A 16-year-old child was shot in the chest, after which he was stabbed with a knife or knives, causing numerous injuries, including a wound that penetrated his lung before being shot to the head. Your brother endured additional suffering during the attack, in which you used at least 2 weapons. Each victim suffered the anguish of anticipating or being aware of the deaths of others. The fraudulently acquired and illegally held firearm was to be taken to a school to endanger the lives and kill dozens of young children. A murder spree with the sole aim of glorifying the name of the perpetrator in the history of mass killers is what you intended. I have in mind the definitive guideline which assists judges dealing with offenders with mental or developmental disorders and neurological impairments. The guideline makes it clear that while any disorder or personality trait present should be considered, it will not necessarily have any impact on the sentence. Culpability, the degree of responsibility for an offender's actions, may be reduced by reason of any impairment or disorder he was suffering from at the time, but this only applies if there is a sufficient connection between the impairment or disorder and the offending behaviour. A consultant forensic psychiatrist, Dr. Ian Koyman, has produced a full report dated the 5th of February 2025 and an addendum for this hearing dated the 2nd of March. Both reports must go with you to custody, together with these sentencing remarks. Dr. Koyman's conclusion is that although you have not undergone a formal diagnosis, you have traits of autism spectrum disorder, ASD, albeit not to a severe degree. ASD is a neurodevelopmental disorder, not a mental illness. It is individual. In your case, it means that you have persistent deficits in social communication and interaction, and restrictive patterns of behaviour, interests and activities. These explain almost all the abnormal aspects of the way You related to people and obsessed about things that you were interested in, such as school shootings and serial killers. The internet facilitated this through the free availability of imagery and commentary. This means there is an indirect connection between your ASD and your offending, but it is important to note that your ASD does not correlate to an increased risk of violence, nor did ASD in this case impair your ability to understand the nature of your conduct, exercise self-control, or form rational judgments when you decided to commit violent crimes. Dr. Koyman observed that since your arrest you appear to be functioning better, and incarceration has not caused you to suffer as most people would, because you have little need for social relationships. You have expressed pride in your crimes and the attention gained from them. Dr. Koyman makes another apposite observation. The rigidity of your thinking due to ASD explains why, when your plans to arrive at the school at about 9 a.m., when the children would be assembled in the early years class, were foiled, you did not adapt the plan. In addition to ASD, Dr. Koyman found you exhibit an extreme lack of empathy, the ability to understand and share another person's feelings and thoughts, which is important for building relationships. You have also expressed no remorse and no sorrow. Indeed, when asked by the psychiatrist if you would try to commit another massacre, you replied, "Well, that's their job, to stop me getting the weapons if I get released." A lack of empathy and or remorse is not unusual in the criminal population. And Dr. Koyman concludes that these drove your decision to commit mass murder and enabled you to do so. In the section concerned with psychopathic disorders, which these traits align with, the guideline advises judges, if empathy is severely impaired, for example, the capacity to recognize distress in others and make appropriate use of that information, this may severely impair capacity to desist from harming others. I add emphasis to the word may. Each individual and each offence must be considered specifically, without a blanket approach. In my judgment, this brief section of the guideline envisages a situation where an offender's ability to make appropriate use of his knowledge of the distress of others, i.e. a cognitive process rather than an emotional one, is diminished, so that his capacity to desist from harming others is severely impaired. This case is far from that. Dr. Koyman states that although you struggle to consider inherently and emotionally how other people think or feel, that is the extent of your limitation. You are intellectually capable of logically deducing the impact of your actions on others. You told Dr. Koyman you had made the choice to commit mass murder and become posthumously famous. It was your preferred alternative to a menial 9-to-5 job for the rest of your life, which you believed was your future. You made a series of choices to put your own desires above any consideration of the lives of many others. There is no suggestion that you didn't understand the law or that killing people is morally wrong. You just didn't care. You had not previously displayed any difficulty desisting from harming others. The lack of an emotional connection to your victims or sympathy for what they suffered or would suffer had important consequences because it disinhibited you. But in my judgment, it does not reduce your culpability because your cognition and ability to refrain from murder were not diminished. It would be irrational for it to do so when the harm you committed and also intended to commit was obviously so very grave, and deliberately so, in order that it gained you the benefit of wide publicity and international infamy. If your lack of empathy makes it easier for you to make that choice, so be it. But I do not treat that as reducing your culpability or as a mitigating factor. I've reminded myself of the guideline on sentencing children and young people because considerations of maturity, insight and understanding do not end once an offender reaches the age of 18. You are different to most people, but that does not mean you were or are immature for someone of your age. Your intentions were not immature fantasy. 6 months ago, you were able to defraud an adult considered responsible enough by the authorities to have a genuine shotgun certificate into selling you face-to-face a lethal weapon. Your communications with the man in advance and in person demonstrated a clear understanding of how to reassure a much older and experienced man. Nothing in your meticulous researching and planning over the course of many months indicates immaturity, nor does the care with which you created a clever forgery of a shotgun certificate to defeat the controls on the sale of guns in the United Kingdom. Your claims to the police after arrest that it was not murder show you had thought about what you might say in such an eventuality. Although I have been troubled by this shocking case, axiomatically a case which the judge considers to be on the borderline is not one that cleanly clears the hurdle of enhanced exceptionality. Having dealt with culpability and maturity, the question is whether in ensuring due punishment, the seriousness of the offences overall is such that it is not possible, consistent with my duty to the public, to specify any minimum term. Having reflected, I agree with the parties and do not impose a whole life order in this case. Firstly, because you were thwarted from completing your intentions. Otherwise, this case would have had a very different and even more appalling outcome. Secondly, this prosecution has resulted in guilty pleas. Thirdly, you were 18 at the relevant time, at the bottom of the bracket for the power provided for in section 3213C, and I have available a substantial finite term well above the starting point. I reject the mildly put submission that disruption to your childhood caused by the separation of your parents when you were young provides mitigation for these offences. The evidence is that your father lived nearby and saw you regularly, most recently just 2 weeks before the murders. You had a supportive family. Stand up, Nicholas Prosper. You intended to unleash disaster on the community of Luton. Your plans were intelligent, calculating and selfish. Your ambition was notoriety. You wanted to be known posthumously as the world's most famous school shooter of the 21st century. The lives of your own mother and younger brother and sister were to be collateral damage on the way to fulfill your ambition. Your plans failed because your mother woke up and realized you had a gun and were determined to use it. This led to an horrific triple shotgun murder, with each victim dying knowing you had killed or intended to kill the others. Words such as heartless and brutal are insufficient to describe the horror of those last moments of the people who were closest to you. I have decided to impose a minimum term. In drawing back from a whole life order, I have already taken into account your age, your guilty pleas, and the fact that you did not carry out any violence after you left your flat, despite having reloaded the shotgun. To account for the aggravating features overall in this case, the minimum term you must serve has to be increased very significantly indeed from the Schedule 21 starting point of 30 years. I remind you that each of the 3 murders you committed would reach the threshold for a 30-year minimum term on its own. The increase I impose is the least possible in all the circumstances. There is no mitigation beyond those matters I have already taken into account. On count 1, the sentence is 3.5 years custody concurrent. On each of counts 2, 3 and 4, I impose concurrent sentences of custody for life with a minimum term calculated from 49 years, from which the time you have already spent on remand must be deducted. Counsel have calculated this as 188 days. If that is incorrect, the case must be listed so it can be corrected. The sentence on those counts is therefore custody for life with a minimum term of 48 years and 177 days. However, you remain highly dangerous, and it may be that you will never be released. On count 5, the sentence is custody for life with a minimum term of 18 years concurrent. This is a discretionary life sentence under section 274 of the Sentencing Act. On count 6, the sentence is 1 year custody concurrent. I order forfeiture of the shotgun, the cartridges, the knife and the phones. Finally, I repeat my observation that Juliana Falcon, Carl Prosper and Giselle Prosper's deaths are almost certain to have saved the lives of many children. The community owes them its gratitude and their memory should be honoured. Please take Mr. Prosper down.
They now have this big minimum term imposed on him. There was a question for the judge there as to whether he should receive a whole life order or he would never be considered for parole. He decided, given his age, he was guilt in a few weeks ago, but it didn't quite reach that standard. But nevertheless, a very long minimum term imposed on him. And this is a teenager who craved notoriety. He researched those school massacres in different parts of the world, and he had a detailed plan as to what he wanted to do at his own primary school that he had left many years earlier. He had no particular grudge against that school, he just craved the notoriety, but it was actually his own mother who denied him that opportunity, who ruined the plan that he had carefully worked out over many months. And this is the story of how that teenager got to that point here in Luton, and as police make this triple murder.
He has time served, of course, having been arrested earlier last year. So with that time, just over 14 years in prison. But that's before he even get considered for the sex before he is eventually released. Clearly, the judge had to take consideration whether in this case his mother and two of his siblings argued on whether it was justified the whole life of taking all of the issues into consideration, including the fact that he was suffering from autism spectrum disorder.
Yes, I think so.
But a full life child is not justified in this instance, and that's why she was allowed a minimum term of 14 years. This case happened on the 13th of September last year, and the living memories of Nicholas Prosper.
Yeah, okay.
His 13-year-old
as well.
Giselle and 16-year-old brother Tyler managed to get the flats he lived in. This was preparing for a much greater tragic disaster in Luton, according to the judge, because it was Nicholas Prosper's plan to go armed with a shotgun that he used to kill his family.
I actually think it would be better to leave a little bit more of a gap, because there are a couple of grabs from that in this routine.
And specifically, he was going to target those very young children.
Yeah, there would be a
the Arabella one. Yeah, I can. It's fine. I can do the sentencing one. That's not a problem.
School massacres that still ring for most people, given the horrific tragedy that's occurred. These school shootings attempted to emulate those mass murderers and actually to outshow them. But faithfully on that day, the 13th of September last year, when we looked to shoot dead those family members,
in passing that sentence in the last few minutes here at Luton Crown Court, the judge said that Nicholas Prosper expressed no remorse and no sorrow. And when he was asked if he would try to commit another massacre if he was released, his words were, well, that's their job, stop me getting into weapons. The judge said that he very clearly chose to put his own desires above the lives of others. No suggestion, he said, that he didn't understand the law, he just didn't care. This is a very disturbing story for that school community in Luton that will have to try and understand how they became the focus of his planning. And it was purely his direct connection, having attended the school, that is why he wanted to go there, because he knew the institution. It wasn't that he had a particular grudge against anyone at the school, but his sort of planning and research anything in the formal police interview, but when he was inside Fletch prison, Nicholas Prosper disclosed to a nurse his plan in a conversation that went on for an hour or more. And within that, he explained precisely what he wanted to do, how he was supposed, in his mind, to kill his family members in their sleep so there would be less disturbance. But because his mother found him with that shotgun inside his bedroom late at night, then that brought his plan forward. There was motion, a lot of noise of the shotgun being fired. It went on for over an hour with violence inside that flat, and he also killed his 15-year-old sister Giselle and his 16-year-old brother Kai. And that put his plans into fast forward. He knew the police would be on their way, responding to the neighbours who heard this incident unfolding in the middle of the night. They left the flats very early and had that 3-hour window between the murders and when the schools would be open. They planned it for that Friday morning, emulating some of the things that other school shooters have done in other parts of the world. There was a very disturbing online life that Nicholas Prosper led. A number of indecent images of children were found on his devices, and he believed that he was in a relationship with a young girl who was a character in a video game called The Walking Dead. His internet history provided the police with much of the evidence that they needed to show that this was what had happened, and the fact that he had, for a year or so, had this interest in guns and massacres and killings. And they know that he bought that shotgun the day before he murdered his relatives. He had arranged with a legitimate firearm dealer to buy the shotgun from him at £650. He did that by forging to a very high standard a firearm certificate that convinced the seller that he was legitimate, and he was given £30 to take him to drive here to deliver the gun to this then 18-year-old. Police investigators at that time were confident and happy that it was a genuine error of judgment on his part and was due to buy the young. He took that shotgun back into the flat. We know that he killed his mother, his brother, and his sister, and was then on his way to that school the following day when police patrol who knew about shooting had been reported to the police in those early hours of the 13th of September, and they sitting on the side of a road. He seemed to wave them down or make some kind of gesture towards him. At this point, he had hidden the shotgun and cartridges nearby so that he didn't draw attention to himself. When he was arrested by the police, he repeated, "It's not murder, it's not murder." He said it over and over again. When they took him to the police station in the custody interview later that day, he refused to answer any questions, simply responding no comments to every question that was put to him. And police, over following weeks and months, with that information from the prison that he had disclosed to a nurse about his plans to do that arrest, notes, handwritten notes that they found. From various representatives of federal police and also the Crown Prosecution Service. And it raises many questions about his internet usage. How was this 18-year-old in his bedroom in Luton able to simply research school massacres seemingly unchecked? He found most of the information he needed from the surface web. So this wasn't the dark web and hidden corners of the internet. This was freely available information that took an 18-year-old to the point of almost committing a school massacre. There were questions too about the ease with which he was able to buy that shotgun the day before, and that is something that I know that there will be further questions about, and calls to tighten the rules around the sales of shotguns. But in her sentencing remarks, the judge also acknowledged that he had autism spectrum disorder, but she was satisfied that it didn't affect decision making enough to be a reason for why this happened, or the primary reason why this happened. This was something that Mr. Prosper researched, something that he knew what he was doing, and he expressed no remorse. He's someone who analysts have found has very little ability to express remorse or empathy for either his victims or anyone else. It is a family tragedy, this story. We saw his father, Raymond Prosper, in court crying at points during the sentencing hearing here in the last hour or so. And we heard from him yesterday in a statement that was read out in court, the victim impact statement. Raymond Prosper said, "Our lives will never be the same." For me personally, when I heard the horrific news on that day, part of my soul died too. This is a lose-lose situation for us all, and we have lost 4 family members. His former partner, Juliana, his son, his daughter, and his older son, Nicholas Prosper, who is now starting a very long prison sentence. He will be in his late 60s before he is considered for parole. Yes, and it is one of the most severe minimum terms imposed in the country, certainly in recent years, but it reflects the gravity of his offences, the premeditation of the murder of his 3 family members, and also illegally obtaining a shotgun the day before via deception, and the scale of planning of what he planned to do at his former primary school is, of course, factor in the calculations around this case. The Crown Prosecution Service has worked very closely with their witnesses on this case. They described him as cold and calculated killer, and the revelation of his plan to shoot classes of school children at their teachers left his family devastated and an entire community in shock. We've spoken to some of the parents from that school, and it's understandably a very difficult story for them to digest and understand, but it is something that the school and the authorities really need to try their best to try to make sure that they are protected, and that school security is, of course, at the forefront of people who run these organisations. It was the very earliest year group that Nicholas Prosper has wanted to target at his old school, 4 and 5-year-old children. It is disturbing on so many levels. The actions of his mother, interrupting him in his room, disrupting his class, was something that stopped him aiming at that notoriety that he craved. We will, as I say, be hearing more from the police. Further statement from Raymond Prosper, led by one of the senior police officers who was in court. Yes, as I said, he refused to stand for that moment of sentencing, and he initially this morning refused to come to court. The judge was not having that. He ordered that he be brought into the shop. This has happened around 11 o'clock or so, and he was then presented to listening to that very clear, very troubling outline of the case that the judge summarised in the last hour. It is a very chilling case which has many difficult aspects. Availability of information online is one of the things that the police have told us is something that they can't tackle alone. They need the help of tech companies and also governments around the world to ensure that the materials that Nicholas Prosper accessed will bring him to that point of almost becoming a notorious school killer. That information is somehow checked and removed from the internet, but that is a very difficult thing that the police say they can't tackle alone. Yeah, we'll have a minute warning.
So in the end, it's not who my friend is,
Can do if you want me to. Yeah, I'll be off camera.
Well done, Tom. That was a lot of air tonight.
There's quite a bit on it.
You want to talk into him? I can just move it over the window.
Yeah, I'll move it in if they do want to come to us.
So in the end, the judge, Mrs. Justice decided that a real life error is not sufficient.
You got to go again in a minute.
Maybe. Yeah. Yeah. We should get a warning, I think. Kirsty, we think it'll be about 5 minutes. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Happy with that? Yeah.
Nice,
Shot him one.
nice speeding stuff.
I won't say.
Yeah, try not to.
Yeah. I think, 5 minutes or so would be. Jane, we're expecting to hear from the police, the senior investigating officer from Bedfordshire Police, and also from another senior officer who will read a statement on behalf of Vladimir Putin, that is the father of a teenager who has just been sentenced for brutal murder. He expressed yesterday at Vladimir Prosper in a victim impact statement the devastating effect that it has had on his extended family. They have been in court listening to details of this case in meticulous planning that this 19-year-old, who was then 18 years old, had put into not just researching, plotting the murder of his immediate family members, but also of planning of the school massacre following the morning that thankfully was averted. We will also hear from the Crown Prosecution Service, who of course have led the court process of this prosecution. It was due to go to trial until Nicholas Prosper pleaded guilty a few weeks ago, but the Crown Prosecution Service say that it was a case in which his cold and calculating killing of his mother, brother and sister has left the family devastated and the entire community in shock. They will also discuss how a teenager could get to that point of freely researching school massacres around the world and then wanting to emulate those who have carried out those atrocities in different parts of America, New Zealand, Norway, various horrific incidents that Nicholas Prosper had become utterly obsessed with. I think we're a few minutes away from steps in the sentence of one teenager, but has much wider questions around gun laws and also what is freely available online. We know that the Police and Crime Commission in Bedfordshire has written to Vladimir Putin, the Home Secretary, calling for urgent reform as a result of this case, after we heard in court how this teenager was able to buy a shotgun and 100 cartridges by simply faking a document that was a firearm certificate that convinced a legitimate seller that he was able to sell for £650 a shotgun to a teenager in a car park in Luton. We saw that captured on CCTV as part of this case, along with the movements of this Nicholas Prosper on the day when he finished killing his family members and then left the flat to try to go towards his old primary school where he intended to carry out mass murder. It is a case that has had a 2-day sentencing hearing in Luton, and that's a very strong minimum term the judge has just passed. Means that Nicholas Prosper will be in his late 60s before he is even considered eligible for the teams from Bedfordshire Police and the Crown Prosecution Service are now approaching the microphones outside the court, and we will hear first a statement from the head of the Major Crime Unit, which will be from Raymond Prosper, words of Raymond Prosper about to be played outside the court, and then we'll hear from the senior
Just to extend it slightly to the left here, just so that Sam and Sean can get rid of it. Just
I am Detective Superintendent Rob Hall from the Bedfordshire, Cambridgeshire and Hertfordshire Major Crime Unit. I intend to read a statement on behalf of the family today. We are devastated by the loss of our loved ones and are horrified to hear what Nicholas had planned. He had completely isolated himself from us over the past year, and we had no knowledge of his intentions. We now see the deaths of Juliana my son Kyle and daughter Giselle had much more meaning and importance. Their deaths and the fast response of Bedfordshire Police stopped any other family in the community going through the pain we have suffered. For now, we would ask people to remember Juliana, Kyle and Giselle for the people they were. Julie was a strong, loving mother to her 4 children, who were her absolute world. In her spare time, she was a keen athlete and enjoyed raising money for charity. Kyle was a kind and funny young man who loved football and boxing. He was a big talent with massive potential. Giselle was a beautiful soul and caring young girl with an infectious smile. She was also an exceptional pupil at school and was loved dearly by her friends. We would like to thank the police for their thorough investigation and for supporting us through this difficult time. We would also like to thank the wider community who have been tremendously supportive and generous with donations to help with funeral arrangements. We know that this awful incident has affected others as well as ourselves, but we now want to be able to grieve and try to move on as a family in private. I'll now hand you over to DCI Sam Karner, who is the Senior Investigating Officer.
Our thoughts today are first and foremost with Juliana, Kyle and Giselle and all those who knew and loved them. All 3 have been at the absolute forefront of our thoughts throughout this whole investigation. Juliana, aged 48, Kyle, aged 16, and Giselle, aged just 13, were brutally murdered by someone they loved, who they should have been able to trust. It is their names we should be saying and remembering today and in the future, rather than the person who carried out such sickening crimes. It's been incredibly difficult for their loved ones in the aftermath of what happened, and I would ask that they be left to process their grief in peace. In my entire policing career, which has included many years spent on the major crime team, I've never encountered anyone capable of such horrific acts while showing no remorse. I've been utterly shocked and appalled by the actions and plans of the offender in this case, and I'm pleased that this truly evil individual will serve a significant proportion of his life behind bars. This has been an incredibly difficult and complex investigation, and I would like to thank all the officers and staff involved in achieving this result today. That includes the officers and paramedics who displayed such bravery responding to the initial 999 call. The crime scene investigators who worked painstakingly to recover evidence from such a horrendous scene. The digital investigators who had to review some of the most awful material from the offender's devices. And our major crime team who meticulously pieced together the evidence to help secure the conviction and jail sentence. Their professionalism and dedication has allowed us to keep fighting for the victims, to get justice and ensure the person responsible is not able to cause any more harm.
I am Sian Saunders, Senior Crown Prosecutor for the Crown Prosecution Service. Our thoughts today are with those who knew and loved Juliana, Giselle and Kyle. Nicholas Prosper's cold and calculated killing of his mother, brother and sister, and the revelation that he planned to shoot a class of school children and their teachers has left his family devastated and an entire community in shock. The case presented by the Crown Prosecution Service, supported by a detailed investigation by the police, laid bare the scale of his planning and the extent of his disturbing interest in mass murder. The evidence in this case was indisputable. and, unable to defend his actions, he admitted to his crimes. It is beyond comprehension that a young man would want to kill those closest to him and target innocent young children. His clear lack of empathy and remorse is highly unusual and deeply concerning. We recognise the deep distress and anxiety felt by those in the local community upon learning the detail of these chilling crimes. Now that the criminal proceedings are concluded, we hope that the loved ones of Juliana, Giselle and Kyle can begin to rebuild their lives.
Tell from the way the doctors were talking about just how upsetting, intense, shocking this case has been. 3 weeks later, the words of the crime officer and their thoughts throughout the case started in September of last year. Tragically killed his nearest relative. Young man.
Yeah, tell Sal we're finished.
Bias. So when they tell the police that there's like a black kids on the board. These guys are biased. I'm telling you this, I am a human rights activist. They're biased.
And lack of empathy and remorse is shown by the team. And we believe in his late
You know, I forgot about that. Oh, I don't see the media. Fuck up for the
long sentence should be
like that.
Premeditation.
White guy who's not the little black you are on the
family member.
You supposed to know because without the media, I don't see it with a pop up like that. Anytime it's, yo, that guy have mental health. So why in a pop up like this, you have a person with mental health problem, when it don't make it no, listen, when it don't make it any better, you media people, because here, someone have mental health problem, do something, you think you want to do that?
To allow him to become notorious and in the world.
There's a lot of them. A lot of them here mad.
Finding him with that shotgun accelerated his plan, meant that it was a much more violent episode in the flat than pursuing the plan. And it meant that he then had a 3-hour window between leaving the flat after the murder and when the school was in that time, he was arrested by police patrol and spotted him on the side of Birmingham Road in Luton, not far from the flats, meaning on his way towards the school. And that massacre was at the it is a chilling and very disturbing case for so many reasons Giselle outlined in court, and also the fact that this teenager was able to find the manifestos of other school killers online, and the police have told us that they want to see more done from tech companies and government to really make sure that that kind of information isn't freely available, so that a teenager can't sit in their bedroom somewhere in the UK looking and absorbing themselves in that world, and then getting to the point where they so nearly committed one of the worst atrocities ever seen in the United Kingdom.
It's on the top of the camera, mate. It's on the top of the camera.
Yeah, I know.
I think, so it's probably going to be between 2 and half 2. Is there a particular time for you guys that works? Okay. So Andrew, but I don't know if we've met before today, so yeah. Hi John, nice to meet you. Megan. Yeah, I don't know whether they... Okay. Yeah, no questions. Yeah.
So maybe 3 half 2 and 3.
Well, between 2 and half 2.
Between 2 and half 2.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to do between to get to my house.
Okay.
But depending on who's doing it and who's not.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I might just, before Gary moves out, I might just get him to leave your legs there a minute, Gary. I put my tripod in.
Okay.
Last one still.
No, that's fine. Cool. But yeah, that works.
Stay in the court. Is it recording? Yeah.
Hello. Hiya. Are you guys planning to stay to get statements from
well, I'm sure we'll cover it. We're part of the 24 Hours team.
Oh, yeah.
We're sort of like filming people being filmed by other people.
Okay. Yeah, just keep recording. So this is another take. Okay, cheers. This is the last take. So just put this one. Right, we're all happy. We're all good. Are you happy with the word? Don't panic. The line.
Not just yet, I just need to speak to BBC. I am, after I've spoken to BBC. Yes.
That's dead back.
Ah, there's Nicola.
But you know, you've got the sun coming in and that, so you start questioning yourself. Nice to see you, Gary. I'll talk to you during the week. Let's see if my voice hangs out, holds out. Katie, nice to see you.
See you later, Gary.
Bye, mate.
See ya. I think that
I mean, I just left the shop. Yeah, 3, 2, 3. I didn't go in at all on the 3. So, that was nice to know. So you're off there. That's something into Route 196. Yeah. Right, I'll see you. Bye, mate. Cheers, Kay.
Cheers, Gary.
guys waiting for the ACT? Yeah.
pull their mics all in.
Right. You okay?
All right, yeah.
Shall I just go? As soon as I open my mouth.
Yeah. Hello, Steve. I've got a retake of the Prosper Social Day 2, or Prosper Sentencing Social. Take two. Do you want to step away and have like press?
Yeah, maybe.
And Steve, if you just keep across this till I ring you, we might have to stop and restart because police are about to do something. So you get in. Yeah, lovely. Brilliant. Cool. Okay. Okay. Cheers.
No, not even. We just don't have any
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Assistant Chief Constable John Murphy of Bedfordshire Police, and I'd now like to read you a short statement. Everyone at Bedfordshire Police is utterly shocked and appalled by the sickening actions of this individual. Over the last 6 months, a team of highly experienced and professional detectives has worked extremely hard to find every piece of information to understand the motivations behind his actions and to ensure that there was no wider ongoing risk to members of the public. What we have uncovered is that he was a lone individual whose plans were fortunately disrupted. I would like to pay tribute to the bravery of his victims, his own mother, Juliana, and siblings Kyle and Giselle, who fought for their lives. The judge said today that their actions had almost certainly saved the lives of many children. I also pay tribute to the neighbour who called the police, the officers who apprehended him, and all of those who have worked tirelessly to secure the compelling evidence which has ensured he was brought to justice. Today he has been sentenced to a significant term of imprisonment. He must serve 49 years before even being considered for release. I know this will not take away from the sheer horror of this incident and his sickening plans to target primary school children in Luton. I do not underestimate the impact on the staff, parents and carers of pupils at schools across the country, but particularly those associated with St Joseph's School. We have worked closely with the local authority to provide support to schools across Luton, and we would urge all staff and parents to make use of the support that Luton Borough Council has put in place. We will have community officers patrolling and engaging around schools in the area during the coming days. Please take the opportunity to talk to them about any concerns that you may have. I want to finish by reminding you all of those who lost their lives on the 13th of September 2024. Juliana Falcon and her children Kyle and Giselle Prosper. It is their names we should remember and pay tribute to for the bravery they showed in those unimaginable final moments. We should not be remembering the person who took their lives. I'd now like to hand over to Hazel Simmons, who is leader for the Luton Borough Council.
I have a short statement to read out. First and foremost, I want us all to remember and honour the 3 victims of this heartbreaking tragedy. Juliana Falcon, Kyle Prosper and Giselle Prosper, their lives, full of promise and love, were taken far too soon. Let us all always say their names, cherishing their memories and the impact they had on those around them. The details revealed in sentencing over the last 2 days have been deeply distressing, shocking and painful. Firstly, for those who knew and loved the family, our hearts go out to each and every one of them as they still try to process this unimaginable loss. We are setting up well-being and emotional support services in the community for anyone who needs it at this time. But the distress is wider than those who knew the family. Our entire school community, including students, staff and their families, are in shock. Anyone with school-aged children will be struggling with what has been revealed in court. Our hearts are with them all too. We are grateful to Bedfordshire Police for their swift action in apprehending this suspect, preventing further devastation and ensuring the safety of others. Their dedication to protecting our community in its most vulnerable moments has not gone unnoticed. During this difficult time, we are providing support to St Joseph's Catholic Primary School, ensuring that counselling and resources are available for any pupil, family member, staff member who needs them. I want to extend my deepest gratitude to the head teacher, the entire staff and the students of St Joseph's for their grace, strength and resilience in the face of such a tragedy. Though the details of this case are deeply troubling, it is important to remember that no harm was inflicted upon the school. He failed. But we know people will have questions about school safety, so I want to reassure everyone that we remain totally committed to the highest standards of safety and security in all Luton schools. Ongoing reviews of security measures, lockdown procedures and site safety will continue to be a priority, with additional support available to any school that seeks it. We are aware that this incident could have happened anywhere in the country and hope that it serves as a catalyst for a national conversation around school security, access to firearms and internet site regulation. Lastly, I want to recognise the incredible strength and unity of Luton's communities. In the darkest of times, we find light in the way we come together, support one another and extend kindness in ways both big and small. Let us hold on to that spirit of generosity and compassion in the days ahead as we mourn, heal and honour the memories of Juliana, Kyle and Giselle. They will never be forgotten. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, John's not going to like that. I couldn't even very well said at the end.
Yeah, I'll put
Do you want to move it so?
You want to see someone's eyes? I mean, don't worry about it now, but all I would say is John's hat was quite a long way down.
Okay.
I mean, I was very tempted at the end,
Yeah.
but I thought, well,
Yeah.
it's not big.
It was probably fine enough because he was looking.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
He did look up occasionally, but yeah, he probably, yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you.
And even made worse, when you speak to me, do you want to do it?
Right. Do you want me to pull this on this side?
Hold on a minute.
We were having an argument because
Did you do it pre-recorded?
No, like, yeah, let me practice.
Okay, ready when you are.
Yeah, we are more than happy to.
Steve, did we just go over here?
What are you going to do?
This guy about to go live.